So the 12th seed in this case has to be the top ranked Group of 5 champ. I don't know how to handicap that this year. That's very hard. You got SMU, the outgoing American or the reigning American champ. They're leaving for the ACC. Tulane's under new management. Memphis is kind of the establishment now in the AAC. The Sun Belt's probably the deepest league, but it's got that Big 12 situation where they all might just beat each other up. So I went with a classic choice, Jesse. Boise State would have been in this spot multiple times had this been in effect, going back years. They won the Mountain West last year, despite firing Andy Avalos midseason. Spencer Danielson comes in, wins the Mountain West. He takes over as the permanent coach. So we put the Broncos in here. So congratulations. That doesn't mean you're playing on the blue, though.
Means you got to face that 5 seed.
That's right.
But you know what's funny? What's funny is that you picked, whether it was out of a hat or you just kind of you went with past history. Boise State being the G5 representation here. I did a breakdown last week of ESPN released their latest FPI, and there's plenty of controversy and all that, and I went through some of that, but there can still be some notable takeaways and kind of some interesting insights into their rankings and analytics, and they have, based on their metrics, Boise State as the most likely G5 champ to make the playoff, which I thought was interesting. Liberty has easily the most cupcake schedule, and if they beat App State in late September, it's hard not seeing Jamie Chadwell's team going 12-0. But do they get penalized this year because they got just completely waxed last season versus Oregon? And does the committee say, we don't want that as our first 12 seed if Boise State's also undefeated or a one-loss? So we'll see. But I think, that's going to be an interesting, however that plays out. I think UTSA is maybe another one to watch there.
Yeah, and the thing is, so Boise State got Ashton Genty back, one of the best retention jobs in the Group of 5. But also
Malachi Nelson.
Yeah, they get Malachi Nelson coming from USC. Liberty, remember, undefeated last year, was ranked number 23, undefeated in the final because their schedule was so easy. Christopher in the chat, going with Liberty, Tulane, or Boise State. Those are good choices. I could see John Summerall in year 1 at Tulane being good enough to win the American. So we'll find out what happens there. But that's the team we're putting in. And so before we talk about these matchups, if you'd like to see these matchups, any of these matchups, Game Time has tickets. So download that Game Time app. You can use the code Staples. Your first purchase, $20 off. Terms apply, of course. But redeem the code Staples, get $20 off your first person. Now, maybe you want to do that on a concert. Maybe you want to go to like a Chris Stapleton show this summer before you dive in to the college football playoff. But yeah, if you want to see any of these college football playoff games, now we're talking about hypothetical ones, but if you want to go to the real ones, Game Time will have tickets to all of them. Plus, they will have tickets to all of the big college football games next year. So if you want to follow your team on the road, if you've done the, we're picking a weekend, we're going to a Big Ten road game, a Big Ten game, or a big SEC game, a place we've never been, Game Time is the place to go for those tickets. So download that Game Time app, use the code Staples, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Game Time has tickets to everything you could need: comedy shows, concerts, games, you name it, and you can get them at the last minute for the best price guaranteed. All right. Now we've worked that in there, which is true. You can get tickets to all of these games on Game Time, and there's a couple of these that you're going to have to go to Game Time if you want tickets, because they're going to be such big games. But here's what that would look like. If we took my top 12, we made Boise State the Mountain West champ and the highest ranked Group of 5 champ. Here's what the first round of games would look like. Number 12, Boise State at number 5, Alabama. That's your noon game on December 21st, noon Eastern time on December 21st, because it's the worst of the 4 games. That's where they're going to dump it. It's going to be on TNT. It's going to be up against the Chiefs-Texans game on NBC, because the NFL is trying to scare the college football playoff off this day, Jesse.
And we still don't know who the TNT announcers are, right?
No, it's ESPN. Like ESPN is producing the
So
game, so
ESPN's
it's
going
going
to
to
produce
look
the
like
game.
ESPN, but it will be on TNT.
Okay. So so they're just sub licensing. Because I was going to say this, if TNT loses the NBA rights, just Charles needs to do some work. Make him go cover an
Oh,
Alabama game.
I said that. Like have them be the pregame show. Now we all
Exactly.
know Charles is not going to be there if they don't have the NBA. So, but Charles may get
Right.
hired by ESPN anyway. So, I knowing how ESPN works, where they'll put Stephen A in front of anything. Like if you hire Charles Barkley, you're going to use him in every potential situation. So of course you're going to send him. Like, and of course you need to send Auburn grad Charles to
To
Tuscaloosa for this game. That
Tuscaloosa.
would be
Exactly.
incredible.
I mean that's you got to use your resources, right? You use your talents.
Yep.
That
Now,
would be a
and
great
it's
game, though.
so this would be, and we'll talk about number 5 right now because number 5 is the catbird seat. So in this situation, we're not sure how everything actually works during the season. We're trying to predict that final ranking. The question is, did Alabama lose the SEC championship game, or did Alabama miss the SEC championship game and like Ole Miss or Texas lost the SEC championship game and fell behind Alabama? If Alabama didn't play in the SEC championship game and wound up at 5, or if you had like Oregon not playing in the Big Ten championship game and winding up at 5, like 5 is the ultimate spot, especially if you did not have to go lose your conference championship game. 5 is the best spot because here's why. It has to do with the mechanics of the bracket. They're not reseeding like the NFL. It doesn't reseed at the end of a round to make sure that you go and play the toughest team available. So 5-12, the winner of that game is going to play the 4 seed. The thing is, the 4 seed is not really number 4. Like in our ranking, we had Big 12 champ Kansas State at 10. Well, that's the 4th highest seeded conference champ or 4th highest ranked conference champ. So they're the 4 seed. So the winner of this 5-12 game plays the 4 seed. There's two things here. You could have a number 5 team that is probably the 2nd or 3rd best team in the country that just dump trucks the 12 seed and then dump trucks the 4 seed and walks into the semis with an easier path than the 1 seed had. Or if the 12 does upset the 5, which is much harder because the 5's not really ever going to be the 5, the 12 could beat the 4. And then you got a Cinderella.
Yeah, I mean the machinations of all this are pretty fun, which is why we're doing this exact exercise. What does stink is that for that 4 seed and why I think a lot of folks have started to discuss the benefits of being the 5 seed is that that 4 seed didn't get they're not getting to host a home game. That game's being played in the Fiesta Bowl. That's it's not in Kansas State. You're not playing in Manhattan, and so that stinks for them. But that's why I don't think, and this is going to be something we'll probably discuss throughout the fall, Andy. I don't think you're going to see teams, kind of take the foot off the gas like what happens in the NFL late in the year where they start resting players and they don't care if they lose that 16th or 7th, week 16 or week 17. I don't think you're going to see that at least in the first couple of years of the playoff in terms of teams kind of jockeying for certain seeds because, we really want that 5 seed so that we don't play in the SEC championship game because I do think your teams are still going to value the buys. The buys are
Yes.
so, as valuable as the 5th seed is, those 4 buys are still the ultimate carrot because even if this game for Alabama, most Alabama fans would say, "Oh, that's a layup. We get Boise State at home in Tuscaloosa. We're going to win that game." Well, yeah, you probably will, but that doesn't mean your team isn't, still
Or you
an
might,
inherent
get
risk.
somebody hurt. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, a year ago, Florida State, yeah, of course they were always going to beat, whoever it was that out in North Alabama or whoever that Jordan Travis got hurt against. But they had to play that game. Jordan Travis gets hurt, their season, completely changes. And so the 5th seed, while valuable, isn't more valuable than 1 through 4, but it does present an interesting scenario if the 12 is able to upset, or if the 5th seed is really maybe the 3rd or 4th best team in the country, then they get to play. Let's say Kansas State is 17 or 14 or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. There's a
Yeah.
pretty big gap there.
So my next first round game, Tennessee at Oregon. That's going to be your Friday night game in Eugene on ESPN and ABC. That's the other thing.
Get your
They're going to
fireworks ready for that
simulcast like they do Monday Night Football. So these games are going to be on ABC. That's probably where most of the people are going to be watching it. It will look like an ESPN broadcast and everything. Same thing. But this would be in Eugene, and this is a case of where one win, one loss probably makes a big difference. Like the difference between Tennessee having to go on the road here and Oregon hosting is probably going to be one game in the record.
I mean, that's the two Hawaiians dueling Hawaiians right there. You got Dylan
Well,
Gabriel
Nico's from California. He's from Long Beach, baby.
Oh, okay. I thought he had a little Hawaiian in him. Maybe not. Okay, but that'd be one heck of a game right there. Tennessee Oregon would be a juicy matchup. I mean, you're talking about all the track speed that Oregon has recruited at wide receiver. You bring in Evan Stewart, they bring back Tez Johnson. What Dan Lanning's done with that program has been, really impressive just from a talent acquisition perspective. And then Josh Heupel, I mean, that, Tennessee has just kind of slowly put this thing back together. I think there's a lot of folks in Knoxville that believe this team, this 2024 team, is even more talented 1 through 85 than the 22 team that beat Alabama and was kind of a fringe playoff team that year. So if Banks' defense can continue to kind of come together, this would be a heck of a game.
Oh, it'd be tremendous. Now, here's another one. Number 10 Ole Miss at number 7 Texas. This is not a rematch because remember, they don't play in the regular season in the SEC. Now, potentially you could see these two in the SEC championship game together against each other. But if that were the case, they're not playing in a 10-7 game in the playoff because one of them is going to be the 1 or the 2 seed. But this would be fantastic too. This would be your afternoon game on Saturday on TNT. TNT lucking out with this one because the only reason is that 8-9 game is one that ESPN's definitely taking. So, but that would be a tremendous matchup because this is new. It's actually SEC new money versus SEC new money.
It is, and this is the Ole Miss. I mean, they're going all in, but this would be a game that Rebel fans have been waiting 60 years for because they have just not been on a national scale competitive to where they can say, hey, we're in the mix for an SEC championship game, or we actually have a legitimate shot at winning the national championship. Lane's done wonders for that program. 11-win season, school record a year ago. But if he gets him to the playoff, they may build him a statue, over there. So
what does the Lane Kiffin statue look like? By the way, he's throwing up the play sheet, right?
Throwing up the play sheet, yeah. That would be great. That would be great. With his back kind of turned a little bit, away from the field.
His hoodie flying up in the air.
Or it's him with his hands, with the play sheet in his hands, already throwing up like the we got it touchdown, the touchdown celebration when the ball's still whizzing through the air.
Probably easier to do in bronze if he's holding it still in his hand.
Yeah.
As we go to the 9-8 game, the 8-9 game, I want to point out something in the chat, and Ozzy and Willie have been talking this out in the chat, and they've got it straightened out. But we'll go back to Ozzy's first comment. The 5th seed could be the second best team in the country, but would have to play the number 1 team in the quarterfinals. No. The 5th seed plays the number 4 team in the quarterfinals if they win. The 1 seed plays the winner of the 8-9 game. And Ozzy's got this figured out in the chat. But for everybody else, let's explain. So your 8-9 game in this situation is the one that ESPN will want. It will be the one that will cost you the most if you're trying to buy tickets on Game Time. Number 9, Notre Dame at number 8, Michigan. The first Notre Dame-Michigan game at the Big House is 2019. It would be for a lot of stakes, and the winner would play Ohio State in the Rose Bowl because I've got Ohio State as the number 1 seed. Can you even imagine, Jesse? Can you even imagine? What if Michigan beat Ohio State in the regular season, or maybe Michigan lost in controversial fashion to Ohio State in the regular season, and now they've got to beat Notre Dame to get a rematch? in the
The
Rose
amount of
Bowl.
the amount of conspiracy theories that'll be spawned if this matchup happens, because so many folks will think the committee, did it on purpose because it's two of the biggest brands in the sport. ESPN, they're the machinations with that, because I mean you talk about a helmet game, Michigan Notre Dame for the chance to play the 1 seed in the inaugural college 12 team playoff would be nuts. And I'm high on Notre Dame this year. I think this is year 3 is famous. It's famous for Notre Dame coaches, Andy. It's a sink or swim season. I wrote a column on it about Marcus Freeman about a week ago. Go check that out at On3. I mean, the history is rich, from Lou Holtz to a couple other guys there. Even Brian Kelly played for a national championship in his 3rd season. And then you got the likes of Charlie Weiss and Ty Willingham, and those guys. They basically face planted in year 3. So Marcus Freeman, he brings back a hell of a team this year. Notre Dame, in my On3 unit rankings, the Notre Dame beat writers actually pointed this out. I didn't even recognize this. They were the only team other than Georgia that was represented in every single category, that had a top 10 unit in every single category. So that's the sort of roster that Marcus Freeman's dealing with right now. This would be one heck of a game if that's the way it played out.
Well, that's the thing. And Notre Dame's another one of these. Now, we've seen Notre Dame in the playoff a few times, and they've lost, in the semis.
Badly.
Notre Dame is the type of program I feel like that can win some games, especially getting into this situation. And Jack Swarbrick, the former Notre Dame athletic director, was part of the group that created this playoff format. You saw with the 5 seed what he was going at. Like, why? I thought it was hilarious when earlier this year they came out with, okay, this is how it's going to be. We already knew that because we've been covering it for 3 years. It was interesting to me how many folks who don't follow this day to day were like, doesn't Notre Dame know they can never have a bye? Like, Jack Swarbrick knew that all along. He understands they don't have to play in a conference championship game, so they don't have to worry about that extra game. It basically puts them in the same boat as a team in a power conference that had to play in its championship game. But if they can get the 5 or the 6 seed, they're in good shape.
And I think in most years, because this year Notre Dame actually plays, all things considered, a probably easier schedule than they typically do.
Yeah.
They typically don't have an FCS team. They typically aren't playing Army and Navy in the same year. So let's say this year notwithstanding, but I think against most schedules, if a Notre Dame goes 9-3 in most years, they're probably in. This year they probably got to go at least 10-2, because again, there's some extra patsies on there they don't typically play. But you still have USC, Florida State, the opener against Texas A&M. I mean, game day is going to be there. That's Elko going up against his former compadres there. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be quite interesting to just see how Notre Dame's season kind of materializes, because there is kind of all these expectations, with the fact that they can't get a bye, but they have a pretty strong chance of making the dance.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how this all works. Go Vols, not 393. Tennessee will be in. They make it 40% of the time, according to FPI. Mizzou only 30%. Yes, a 10% difference in FPI in June will guarantee everything. But I love that everybody's arguing about this now.
Well, did you see? I don't know if you saw my column on this. I do think what's interesting, just because that Tennessee fan brought this up, last year in the 14 playoff in ESPN's FPI rankings, 8 teams had at least a 20% chance of making the field. Now that field has ballooned to 12, the 20% threshold is now 18 teams. So it does kind of, put in real numbers, real perspective, just how many more opportunities there are for the Missouris and for the Tennessees to even be in the mix this year compared to the last, several seasons.
Well, and I think because of the competitiveness of the Big 12, especially, I think the real number of teams that can start this season with a, somewhat realistic playoff hope is closer to 30.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you've got
I
the
would
group
say
of 5 teams, like all of that.
right,
All of that matters.
right.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.